Well, thank you to those of you coming to us from Eventbrite or any other outsource. We are Ama La Vida. We are a life, health and wellness, leadership, and career coaching company. And my name is Justice. I'm a relationship strategist here on the team. And what that means is when you contact us to have a conversation about your goals, generally speaking, you'll end up on my calendar and we'll spend a half hour together talking about your current situation, your future plans and goals, and really just get to know each other. That way I can make a recommendation of a coach or multiple coaches on our team that I think are most appropriately suited to help you accomplish those goals. So if anybody is thinking of anything right off the bat that they want to have a conversation about, I will drop my link here. We are filling up really fast as we approach the end of the year. So it is first come, first serve. So feel free to jump on my calendar at any point. But with that being said, we have Coach Nicole here with us today. How are you?
I'm good. I'm really excited to talk about this topic with you. As Justice mentioned, we're ALV and we love helping people get the best job that they can have. And that's my job as a career coach anyways. And I'm Nicole, like Justice mentioned. So I'm a certified career coach, facilitator, and services provider. I've been doing this for about 9 years now and have worked across a variety of sectors and different industries and companies. And I've had the opportunity to work with CTOs all the way down to parolees, which was some of my first work out of grad school. I've had a lot of opportunities to work with different folks. And I'm really excited to talk to you about what's kind of a silly topic today, but something that's just a little bit of a change of your classic resume, interview kind of experience. And for a little bit about me, I spend my time with my 2 cats, Carl and Katerina, my wife, Anime. I've been playing roller derby for 7 years, and I'm kind of addicted to arcades. So, like the topic said, finding your one and the one, dating and job searching. The goal of today's session is that I really want you to appreciate that there's a lot of parallels and similarities between dating and job searching. The way you approach one can often be the way you approach the other and see a remarkable amount of success. And the objectives is for you to identify those commonalities and then ideally use your skills in one of the ways to help you in the other. So if you're a really great partner or you really show up, use that way that you show up and work with your partner and communicate to land you a gig. And are you really great at your career? There's a reason that you got there. There's skills that you had that often relate to communication and interpersonal skills that can really help you in a relationship. And so our sections and parallels are, first is setting an intentional job search, which really boils down to intentionally dating. You want to consider all your job search options that are available to you for perusing jobs, much like you want to consider your dating options. We don't want to jump too quickly into anything. We've all jumped into relationships or into jobs we don't love, and then we wind up having to find a new one. And then we have networking events, which equates to our speed dating, event mingling. Has anyone ever tried speed dating? Before I got married, I really intended to try it, but I hadn't. Has anyone tried that, had success? I'm really curious. Really? Okay, no one's done speed dating, so I guess no one will answer my questions today. But if anyone ever gets into that, reach out and also add me on LinkedIn because I would love to hear about how that goes. And then we have the filling out of dreaded job applications. Everyone loves where they get to copy and paste the resume all over again into another format just so that it can go through an ATS. And this is much like signing up for dating websites. Ask a trillion details, tedious and repetitive, but you have to do it to get through the process. And finally, for this presentation, it's all about writing a resume or writing a dating profile. Has anyone in here online dated? Anyone at all? Simple yes is all I ask. Thank you, Justice, for sharing my LinkedIn. If no one's online dated, I'm really curious if you can share in the chat how you found your partner or would like to find your partner, because I don't know. Okay. Nice, Libby. Hinge, very nice. I mean, Alyssa, if you're a good networker, I think that's a great way to go because getting referrals is the best way to find a relationship. Has anyone, I mean, Libby, you met your love on there. Has anyone else had positive online dating situations? I know I get a lot of mixed reviews on that. So has anyone ever had like a really good time on that, met your one, or are we kind of like the classic story of the struggles of online dating? Oh, nice. How long ago, Trina? Trina? Oh, wow. Okay, so you guys have been together a really long time. Well, congratulations on that. I don't think I've, wow, I don't think I have anything left from middle school. Never mind, I've met my partner through there. So congratulations on the ultimate connection. All right, so, I mean, seriously, that is impressive. I mean, I knew one other couple like that, but you were, I think, the second in the world that I've ever heard of doing that. So congratulations to literally almost a lifelong commitment. All right, so dating and job searching. With both, ultimately, you need to have the right one. That's the most important thing, is you want to have a job that you love, or ideally a person that you love. Love may come in many different formats. With a job, perhaps we just love a job that gives us work-life balance, or maybe we love a job that pays us well. It's not the same for everybody, but you want to love your job. And the same way you want to love the person that you're with. Love takes many forms in different types of relationships and periods of our life, but the underlying principle is the same, is that you want to feel love. There's going to be a lot of options out there, but not all of them are the right fit. Unfortunately, we'll always wind up in jobs or going on dates that weren't a perfect lineup with what we were looking for, but all of them are learning opportunities. And so that's like something I like to try to keep in mind. And both of these, you want to be thoughtful and intentional, as those will bring results. We've all rushed in, a lot of us have rushed into sometimes relationships or into jobs because they seemed like really good opportunities. But if we'd really thought about it and reflected on what we wanted and what we needed, we would have realized that we should have been more selective and more strategic in what we picked as a job or a relationship, because both can take a large chunk out of your life and maybe not be as rewarding as you deserve. In either situation, knowing the who, what, where, when, how, and why in both will save you both head and heartaches. So as I said, being intentional, knowing what you want, and knowing what you can bring. And if you know the one, you can succeed at the other. So the first thing we'll talk about is assessing needs. What do I need in a partner? Or what do I need in a job? It's all about finding a personal and a professional fit. Both should be really intentional in nature, as I mentioned, and you want to be detailed and thorough. Before I met my wife, she had a 197-point checklist of what she was looking for in a partner. Once we went through it and sifted a little bit to it, it was about 159 once we reduced kind of the doubles, but she was very, very intentional when she was looking for her one. And I hit about a 96%. And so I was grateful that I was able to meet her checklist, and she's the best person in my life. So if you have the opportunity to be really diligent and thorough with who you're looking for, you'll find someone who matches you. And it's the same thing with a job. When you're looking at a job, you should find out about the culture. You should find out about the reviews about it. You should find out about leadership. Anything that you can do to find out about the company will make you better informed and give you a better understanding of what you're getting yourself into. And so you're going to want to have pros and cons lists. I love having pros and cons lists with when it comes to a job. What am I going to gain from this? Is it experience, a reasonable salary, a work-life balance? And what may I potentially lose? A title, the ability to travel, or other assorted things. And so you're always kind of making those, this is what I'll gain, this is maybe what I lost, and where am I okay with this? And so those are kind of figuring out your non-negotiables and areas of leeway. If you have a family and need to be home a lot, you need a flexible schedule. And so that's something that's a non-negotiable. But if you're willing to work off hours and things like that, that's an area of leeway because you're willing to help when you don't have to be actively at service at home. And always make sure that you know where you are at and what you can bring to the table. And by that, I mean, you want to know when you're approaching a relationship, whether you're looking for a monogamous or a long-term or something short-term, because you don't want to lead the other person on. You want to be honest and fair with them. And it's the same thing with a job. When you go to a job, you don't want to just be thinking about leaving that job and for the next job. You want to make sure that you're investing in it and it makes sense for you to line up with this particular opportunity. And so a quick question, I mean, you don't have to answer this in the chat, but I'd love to hear anyone's thoughts if they have it. But have you ever made concessions in a role or a relationship that you wound up really regretting taking the opportunity, and why? I was like, I'll give anyone a chance to speak before I start reflecting on my personal experience. I mean, I think you guys are the most successful daters I've ever met based on your comments. So I'm excited that you're all doing so great at this. And thank you, Libby. I appreciate you following up. Yes, absolutely. The resentment and frustration. Or when you try to meet someone and you're like, if only they changed this about themselves, they would be perfect. I've definitely had those relationships where I was like, okay, maybe they'll improve on this, or maybe they'll start doing this, or maybe they'll X. But if you don't get X out of the gate, people can evolve, but chances are people have behaviors. Yes, or I can make it work and then I can't. Yes, absolutely. Consent. And you want to be true and authentic to yourself. And so you want to make sure that when you're getting into a relationship that you're making concessions that aren't concessions, but compromises. Yes, not setting up boundaries. Oh, yes, Alyssa, professionally, that's a very, very frustrating one. Very, very frustrating. And I mean, especially in a place where are you located, Alyssa, did you say? I'm curious as to where you're, my apologies if you said it. Okay, so the specific role was down south. I mean, it is such a frustration when your experience is being undervalued. And so it's definitely frustrating. And I'm sorry you took that, but I mean, it's impressive that you took something for lower pay because you loved it enough. And so that's worth commending for sure. But now that you have that experience, you're able to pursue a lot more exciting things. So that's exciting. And then with my clients, I've definitely seen folks who they were like, okay, the only thing I need is salary, but I really want this, but I'm willing to give this up. And I'm like, okay, but really, what are you looking for? And so when they get the dream salary job, but they realized they didn't get, they were looking for a short commute. This job wound up being 40 minutes away with traffic. That wasn't ideal. It turned out that they were going to have to be contract at a very great rate without the stability and the benefits that they would come with a salaried position. And ultimately they figured like, oh, I thought money is what I wanted and I was going to make concessions on these other things, but realized these are the things I actually needed. And by giving these up, I'm unhappy. And then yes, staying in a job 2 years after I knew I should get out. Angela, may I inquire as to what kept you the 2 more years? Oh, I'm sorry to hear that, Angela. That's a difficult place to be in, especially when you really are not enjoying the role and you don't feel like you're deserving of the best. And I hope you've been able to see more of how awesome you are and what you bring to a role, and that you've been able to move on to that. Stability, yes. Oh, Katie, what brought that realization? And I'm glad to hear that, Angela, that you're in a much better role now. Everyone deserves to find happiness in their profession. Company was acquired and culture and new role are a terrible fit. Oh yes, the change management reorg situation. So very common, especially post-COVID, and that you've been, that you've had that experience and the impact of that. Have you started debating where you'd like to go, or are you thinking a full new transition? And when I speak with my clients and I coach them through these situations that they make these concessions, we reflect on what had initially been what they were prioritizing and why was that? And then we reassess based on what you've learned, is this a situation where the concession cost you more than you gained? And in that client's case, it did. He saw his family less, he had less opportunities to have stability, salary wasn't always consistent. And so he wound up having a lower quality of life, even though he was making a really great rate. So we redirected, we reassessed, and he found something at a salary that was still very, very reasonable, but allowed him to live the other pieces of his life. Yes, Katie, transitioning into a new role in a company is definitely risky too, because you transition into a new position, you're hoping for a change in leadership, a change in vibe. But if you're not looking to stay long-term, you're kind of always half in, half out, which is understandable when you no longer align with the direction of the company. So, well, I'm glad not too many folks have made too many concessions. So let's hop on here. Next, we want to consider looking at options. How can I find my romantic match? Or what new ways do I have to find a new job? So choices, where can I find my right fit? Prospects are very plentiful in a few ways. Networking or social events, the classic way. I know a couple of people mentioned that they like to meet people through friends or family. I mean, sometimes your brothers, cousins, well, I guess they're your cousin too, but your brother's friend who went to this gal in law school knows someone. So networking isn't just about someone immediately helping you, but it's all about net weaving and building a spider web of relationships. It's about interactions at work or in middle school. So places where you've had a lot of opportunity to spend time and connect with people. And online profiles. So for my online daters versus my offline daters, it is quite the world right now. And if you're an offline dater and been lucky, I would say you've been lucky. I met my wife online dating, but it's definitely an art unto itself. And so what you want to do is you want to reflect on your connection style. Are you someone who connects best in person? Or do you really like to write messages? I'm a texter, to be perfectly honest, so I would love to text with someone as long as possible before I meet them. Or do you like blank slate or referrals? Do you want your friend saying like, you definitely need to meet my friend Mary? Or are you someone who likes to go in and make their own first impression? Same thing with a networking event. Do you want to go into it and have the opportunity to establish yourself? Or would you like someone to give you an introduction? Really depends on the vibe of who you are. And so, what ways have you found to effectively meet people, and why were they effective? Many of my clients will do a couple of things that they like to do to meet people more effectively. As I mentioned, there's the spider web way, where you connect with someone who may not immediately have a role to offer to you, but may know someone else who does. And so by linking to that, you have more opportunities to gain more connections. The other thing that I find to be effective for people to meet people is kind of doing this concept of net weaving. And by net weaving, I mean building relationships that you are offering of service, not only of a direct ask. So you may not be looking for an admin job, but your friend Sarah is looking for an administrative job, and you refer them over to Michael, who's the recruiter that you just met. You didn't personally benefit from that. However, Sarah and Michael will be grateful for your help and will look forward to potentially helping you in the future. And the other ways you can effectively meet people is, of course, online. Yes, try anything once. You may meet someone or learn a skill that will help you later on. Yes, that's such a great point too, is that you get to learn things from people. I've gone on dates with people where we've done axe throwing and they were great at it. I was terrible at it, but it was something that I got to see someone else do successfully and had a chance to kind of learn about it. I've gone skiing twice and it was terrifying, but I learned how to slide down a hill and not hurt myself too much. So definitely being willing to try stuff and meet people will give you not only relationships, but things that you can use for the rest of your life. So meeting and mingling with prospects. So how should I approach dating in person? Or how can I seed at networking or social events? So we want to ace those in-person interactions. But we need to recognize that total awkwardness may ensue. Anyone who's ever met someone at the bar, it's a little bit easier if you've had a couple of drinks. Everything seems to smooth a little bit closer and a little bit easier. But when you go to a networking event, unless you're one of my extreme extroverts who I love, and they have an energy where they can just go in and command a room and make relationships, you typically may be a little bit more shy about just putting yourself out there and really going up to people, because it can be a little awkward being like, hi, I'm so-and-so. Hi, I'm so-and-so. And then either what do you talk about, or do you get kind of down to a transactional level where you're like, I'm looking for a job. I'm looking for a job. Maybe you can help one another, but it's nice to have something to bond on. In these situations too, you also want to dress to impress, but dress to impress to fit the situation. If you're going to a tech event for small startups in your local area, you're probably not going to wear a suit. It's not really the vibe that goes with those kinds of events. But if you're going to a big marketing event for the finance sector, you very well may wear that suit because it would make sense for the crowd that you're going to be mingling with. You definitely want to know your talking points. And by knowing your talking points is, what are you going to bring to the conversation? So these are things that I do well. These are things that I can provide. And then knowing what your specific asks are. Because when people are going to network with you, they're going to be like, well, what are you looking for? And if you say a job, that can mean a lot of things. It isn't super helpful to someone trying to connect you with people. So make sure, much like dating, that you're intentional in knowing your talking points. You want to be an attentive listener. I mean, one of the worst things I've ever experienced on a date is when someone just talks at me the entire time. And have you ever went on dates with people where you'll ask them like, well, how do you like the color blue? And they'll answer, but then they don't ask, and you? Does anyone ever have that experience where you just feel like you're the interrogator and then you're just dragging out the conversation? Oh, it's the worst, right, Jacqueline? Yes, it's the worst. Oh, I'm so sorry, Martina. All the time is the worst, because it's just so frustrating, because you're like either like, do you not care? I guess is my first question. It could be social awkwardness too, because you know what I mean, people get nervous and social interactions get hard. But always in the back of my head, I'm like, do you not want to know if blue is the color that I like? I always want to know what other people like. So that's always my curiosity. And finish conversations politely and try not to be superficial. Yes, right, Martina? Oh, good gracious. And deliver on promises. So if you said you're going to follow up for a second date, please follow up for a second date. If you said you were going to connect with someone on LinkedIn and offer them a connection to someone, make sure that you do that, because that is exactly what you said you would offer, and authenticity and follow through is important. And no ghosting. Has anyone ever been ghosted before? I have been ghosted. Not a lot. I have never ghosted, because I feel like that's very rude, but being ghosted is very, very, very sad. For those who are not familiar with kind of like the online dating vibe, is being ghosted is you'll be having a conversation with someone, or maybe gone on a couple of dates, and then they just poof, they disappear. Oh yes, being ghosted for job interviews are the worst. Yes, when you're talking to a recruiter and you think everything's going well, and then they just disappear and you never hear from them ever again. I think that's one of the most frustrating things with job seeking. I would say arguably one, maybe the worst. I don't know. Would anyone agree with me that being ghosted is one of the worst parts of being in the job search process? Both on the dating and job fronts. I'm sorry, Katie. And yes, Angela, when you've had an interview and you get ghosted, that is just so unprofessional too. And the way that I kind of frame that is, did you really want to work for a company anyways, that's kind of their MO? You know what I mean? Like, it's really unfortunate that you spent the time and the energy, but they've almost done you like a little bit of a favor. That if this is the way they treat people, like imagine if you're internal staff. You know what I mean? Exactly. Bullet dodged. And be honest about your intentions. So are you looking for a full-time role? Are you looking for something that involves a certain skill set? Are you looking to contribute something? And what kind of dating are you looking? Like I said, short-term, long-term, fling, triad, monogamous, whatever. There's a whole assortment out there. And respect people's space. Same way on a first date, you don't want to be up in anyone's grill. You know what I mean? Like, everyone likes respect space. The bubble is a good way to start, sort of thing. And it's the same thing with the networking events too. I find that sometimes people will have a few drinks and then all of a sudden they will want to come closer to you because their social boundaries are lowering. But I'm like, no, I would still like space. So make sure if you're socializing with alcohol that you're being respectful of social norms and social space, because not everyone does that on dates or in networking events, and it can be unfortunate. And yes, be conscious of that refreshment consumption. And make sure you always do appropriate follow-up time. Nothing is worse than when you go on a date with someone and then they message you like 3 days later. I'm sorry, maybe that's what we did in maybe the 90s. That was cool in the 90s, but I think we've moved past that. Does that still happen? Do people still get messaged 3 days later? And yes, Jacqueline, it really does show lack of values when a company goes you that far in the process. It's just inconsiderate. I mean, yes, bullet dodged, but inconsiderate for sure. All right, well, I'm glad that no one gets messaged 3 days later and that you're all getting quick follow-ups, because that is something that I appreciate. And so I had 3 interviews and then was ghosted by an employer who said offer was coming. Oh, Erica, I'm so sorry. That's terrible. Yes, that's like next level ghosting. I think the only level above them is when you get the contract and you're 2 days from starting and they cancel your job. I think like yours is very, very close to that level. Oh, 3 interviews. I'm so sorry. I mean, the nice thing about the hiring world is we're shifting a little bit away from these multi-level interviews because talent is more in demand. So now is a good time to be looking for a job because we have more control. So something to take a little bit is that interview length should decrease a little bit. And then other tips that I've used to approach good in-person interactions is just asking inquisitive questions. Being an attentive listener is good, but being genuinely interested and curious. Because you don't want to treat these networking or dates as very transactional. On the first date, you don't want to ask someone to be their girlfriend because I'm like, well, do you want me to be your girlfriend or do you just want a girlfriend sort of thing? And so when you're networking with people too, like, are you just wanting a job or a relationship, or do you want one with that person? You just want to come off authentic. So these are just quick reflections. What is a skill you can take from your professional relationship building that could help you with your romantic life? As we've talked about, networking is a great one. You can find online platforms to start your dating life. And then also thinking about what is an experience in your romantic life that helps you to be a stronger communicator at work. You know what I mean? Usually you're pretty good at listening at home. We all have our days, but I'm pretty good at listening to my wife, and I can be very attentive to the things that she needs. And so I try to take that mentality into my workforce as well. And so when I'm speaking with colleagues or clients, is really honing in on what they're telling me on a conscious and a subtext level. Because sometimes she'll be telling me something and I'll be like, I don't know if that's actually how you're feeling. And clients will be the same way. They come into the session with one intention, but we really need realize that there's something else we need to work on. Or maybe they need to not have a career coach for that moment, and they would really benefit from a life coach. The wonderful thing about ALV is even if you work with a career coach, you can also work with a life coach or a health coach. So you can have a really well-rounded coaching experience. So something to take into consideration because that's not very common. All right, creating profiles. Do we consider dating websites, matchmakers, or online groups? Or job boards, LinkedIn, Monster, Meetup, all these different ways that you can meet different folks by creating online profiles. But it's all about filling out those dreaded applications. Unfortunately, these applications are the gatekeepers to that next role or that next relationship if you're an online dater. Or even if you're just going through meetup groups, you still have to fill out profiles to be able to join and get details. But if you don't do this, then you don't even get to the next level. So definitely everyone has those times where they're filling out a job application, you submit a resume, and essentially all they ask you to do is copy and paste everything into that application again, all to serve that lovely little ATS. And so we have to fill them out even if we really don't like them. There's tons of details and they feel very repetitive, and everyone loves copying and pasting and typing the same thing over and over again. It just gets tedious. You also reveal things that you may not, that you'd like to give context to. And by that, I mean employment gaps. If you submit an application and they just notice that there's a 3-year gap, but you don't get an opportunity to explain it, that it was for the reason of a sick parent, or you went to a professional development program, or things that may have given you that gap within there, you can get you can be eliminated before you even had a chance. And sometimes that means you're showing off undesirable job titles or undesirable relationship statuses. And then Yes, undesirable job title. So maybe you've been acting as a manager, but your title has only been a clerk. And so when they look at your job application, they see clerk when really you've been acting in a management capacity, and you'd be able to showcase that better on your resume than ever you could on an application. And then for children or current relationship status, anyone who's done online dating knows that a lot of them have features for indicating whether or not you have children or your current relationships. And sometimes people are like, I have kids, but they're grown up and out of the house. And so it's no longer as relevant to where the relationship is at that status, but you don't get a chance to say that. And same thing with education level or political stance. We all know that bachelors are so common of an expectation within the day-to-day job seeking process, but during the day-to-day seeking process. But then we also know that people are using bachelor's degrees less and less. So that's nice. But if we only have a high school diploma, sometimes that doesn't look great on an application. Same thing with political stances on dating profiles. A lot of profiles give you the opportunity to identify that, but there's always qualifications to the way we feel about things. And so often you're disqualified before even a conversation. And does anyone actually read these half the time? I know I've seen so many applications that people just don't even read. You filled out all the content and it's just something to put into their standardized system. And it's really frustrating. So then his curiosity is, what is something you'd include in an application or profile that you'd want to provide an explanation for, and why? Things that I've seen too is when I'll have clients who seem to have a lot of jobs in a relatively short amount of years. And when you look at that, you're like, well, does this look like job hopping? When really, if you look at it and you speak with them, it's like, oh, well, you were on a grant or a contract and that ended. Well, it's not really your fault because you couldn't control that. Or you were promoted, so you got a different title. So there again, you didn't hop jobs, you were promoted to a higher level. So you may have someone who has multiple jobs, but really it wasn't in their control whether or not they ended the job, or they were doing something positive in their job that made them change titles and the years associated. So always something to kind of consider in that sense. And then creating content. What am I going to write in my dating profile? Or how am I going to write my resume? So give me the deets, writing winning materials. Both call for you to show off your penmanship. Some more and some less. There's Indeed and Tinder versus LinkedIn and OkCupid. And both should involve you having a flow and tell a story. With resumes, it's really frustrating to see a resume where it's just a description of job duties. I'm like, well, I know what a project manager does. I could take a look at that. But tell me what your story is. What have you accomplished there? What achievements have you done? Give me a real narrative of what you've accomplished as a professional. And the same thing on your dating profile. I don't want to just see like a peace sign and a smiley face. This doesn't give me any context to who you are and what your story is. I want to know more about you before I click yes on your invitation to chat with me, sort of thing. And you really want to have an engaging summary. As people probably know, the objective is a way of the past. Is anyone still using objectives these days, or have we all moved summaries profiles? Please tell me no one's using objectives. Or if you are, try to not use objectives. Okay, so the summary is the way of the world these days, or profile, however you'd like it to describe it. And really that's the section that gives a quick overview of who you are. This is what I bring to the field. These are my years of experience. These are my specialties. And then typically a line that describes you a little bit as a human and a bit of an interest factor. And so both that and in your dating profile, which should have some good details about who you are, what you're looking for, why you'd be great in a relationship, you really want those to both really shine. And what you really want to do is highlight what you have to offer. Repeat that. Sorry, Jackie, I don't think I understand your question. Can you repeat that objective parts, please? Oh, okay, sorry. Yes. Yes, so on the top of your resume, once upon a time, we would say like looking for job doing, administrative assistant where I can use my communication, typing, and etc. skills. So that's what we used to do. But now with our summary, we want to have essentially a bullet point that says X amount of years of experience doing what's related to the position that you're applying for. And then a bullet point that essentially describes what your specialties are and what you bring to the field. and then a bullet point that kind of describes you as a human, like collaborative team player with empathetic listening skills and communication competencies. And really little sneak peek or quick tip with the last bullet point, that's really where you get a chance to weave in all of those soft skills that you've seen in the job posting. So when they ask for collaborative and they ask for team player and they ask for, works well with others, you can put all of this into that one bullet point in your summary. So you can address all of those keywords without having to try to go through your resume and weave them into different places. So it's a great way to describe yourself as a person and also cover all of those quick words that are going to be in the keyword search, if that makes sense. All right. And yeah, showcase your best features. That's what's most important. And you never really want to focus on the unattractive. When you get into conversation with someone, sure, you want to be authentic, maybe not on the first date, tell them everything that's ever happened to you, but you don't really want to write on your resume that you were fired from a role. Even if you were fired from a role, you want to focus on what you contributed to the role, the achievements that you had. And then if you get into conversation with someone and they talk to you about it, then you be authentic about it and say like, yes, this is what happened to me. But you get that opportunity to give context. Much like the application, if they see that, you get this opportunity to give context so that you no longer are just removed from the running because of something that can be explained. Perhaps you had a disagreement with the new culture. I know one of you mentioned that the new culture and leadership style isn't what you relate to. And so perhaps that's the case and you just didn't connect. Sometimes people are laid off and you can't always qualify that. And so we don't want to focus on highlighting those details. We want to focus on highlighting what you've done best and what you do really well. But honesty is always the best policy. So don't write on your dating profile that you're 6'3" and weigh 210 pounds and go to the gym 6 times a day. Erica, do you have I think you accidentally maybe click the hand. If you have any questions, we'll grab it at the end for sure. Yes, honesty is the best policy. You never want to write you're 6'3" and 210 pounds of pure muscle on your dating profile if you're not, because when you go on that first date, people are unfortunately going to have unrealistic expectations of what they have when they're about to meet you. You never want to set that. And then same thing with on a resume or a LinkedIn. You don't want to lie about the years of experience you've done. You don't want to lie about the metrics you've achieved. But another quick tip with resumes and metrics is it's really good to add quantities to things that you've done. So how successfully you've done things, how frequently you've done things, how accurately you've done things. And no recruiter is going to expect you to know that you increased the bottom line by 37%, but you probably know that you increased it by over a third. And so giving ranges is totally acceptable. So saying 30 plus or saying managed 10 plus people. You don't have to give the exact metric, but by giving some numbers, you're giving people's eyes places to dart because there's far less numbers than there are words. So it's a great quick tip to get recruiter attention without having to do a big lift on your resume. And then has anyone found ways that makes their writing resumes or profiles more interesting? Does anyone have something that they add to make them stand out? I know with me, sometimes I've in the past, depending on the company, I'll mention roller derby. You know what I mean? I'll look at the LinkedIn, see who looks like maybe interested in that kind of thing. And if it's appropriate, kind of make a quick reference to that. Because I've done management with roller derby, I've done training, I've done recruitment and marketing. So I have a lot of relevant professional experience related to roller derby. So for those of you who have volunteer experience, don't undercredit that in your resume. And these days, you no longer have to put volunteer experience in a different section if it's something related to your professional experience. You can put it in your professional experience section. We don't call it paid professional experience, we call it professional experience. And if those skills are contributing to who you are as a professional, they deserve to be showcased in the same section and not viewed diminutively as quote unquote only volunteer work. So quick tip about volunteer work use now. And so in a nutshell, being intentional with both will bring the best results. But both involve work, but they're certainly worth it. By making sure you approach both with this mindset of ready to grow as well, ready to learn. As one person had mentioned, being able to learn from other people is a really wonderful skill to have and wonderful opportunity too. I've dated, I don't want to say multiple because that sounds terrible, but having dated throughout my life, I've had so many opportunities to meet new people and meet different cultures and different types of families and travel to different places. And your work can offer you the same too. You know what I mean? You can meet new people, develop work relationships, travel the world, grow as a professional. Both are really interlinked. And if you really go forward with the mentality of, I really want to write a great profile, I would really want to write a great resume. Both of these will enable you to connect with the people that you're looking to have conversations with. If you decide to start looking at networking relationships as a way to meet and expand your network to potentially have connections long-term, that's a great approach to having dating too. You know, I believe, Alyssa, you were saying you want to meet people in person. Well, you need to keep meeting more and more people so that you can keep broadening your dating pool. And it's kind of the same with professional networking as well. And so our takeaways are, what we learned was that there's similarities between dating and job seeking, and that knowing one can help you improve the other. So if you're a great resume writer, take that talent for words and put it into your dating profile. If you have a gift for gab and networking is your key, take that opportunity to reach out to friends and family about meeting new connections and having new opportunities to connect with people. But there's always multiple factors to consider in building relationships. So as we've talked about, there's dating profiles, there's connecting with people, there's figuring out how to find a job, there's figuring out about how to be intentional. And either way, in all of these situations, having great content is really important and having a great attitude. And things that you can do next is observe your future interactions at work or in relationships and see if you can see those parallels and kind of at least find humor in the fact that you're like, oh yeah, writing a dating profile is just like writing a resume. I have to advertise myself. I have to highlight all of my best features. I got to get people to click and want to read more about me. And so look for those parallels, apply that one skill set to the other, and reflect on your situations and remain aware of your strengths and weaknesses, because that's really important. Knowing what you can bring to a relationship or to a job is really important because you want to be honest and authentic to what your offerings are. And I know all of you probably have a great deal that you can bring to these different relationships. And if you have kind of any conversations or questions related to that, you can now go out there and make those connections because you're knowledgeable of dating strategies and you're prepared to apply the methods to land the one. And if you'd like, you can join me for Finding the One Part 2 about connecting, interviewing, negotiating, and landing the one. So kind of taking that next level of how we actually interact and seal the deal, if you will. And that's it for me.
Thank you so much, Nicole. There's a lot of great takeaways from that. So if anyone here on the call, if you want to work with coaches that have a fresh perspective on their career search, if you're looking to do a little career exploration or really just a holistic career and or life redesign, feel free to reach out and let's have a conversation. I will drop my link one more time. And there's that for you. I'm also going to put the link to our website in case you guys want to look around and see some of the other coaches we have, because we have other coaches that can also help you out as well as Nicole. And Nicole, can you remind me about how many spots do you have left for new clients?
I have about 3 right now for new clients. And so if you're looking for kind of a humorous perspective on the job search, I'm happy to provide that. And then maybe Justice, you can pop in my LinkedIn link one more time.
Yes, absolutely.
So if you ever want to reach out via LinkedIn or connect and see how we can chat and potentially work in the future, feel free to connect. And I'd love to help anyone who may be interested in working with us.
And that being said, also, if you do indicate on your intake form coming from a webinar, we are offering a promotion that your first session is free if you do sign up with us. So this little thing just keep in mind. And now we can open this up to questions and answers. So if anyone has any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat, or if you're comfortable enough, you can go off of mute and ask your question.
Yeah, but anyone, I know I didn't give the opportunity to speak as much. So I'd love if anyone has an experience they'd love to share or questions. And if not, I will not force any of you to share about your dating life because I understand it can be a very sensitive topic.
And then once again, this is going to be, it is recorded and will be sent out to everyone who joined today. So you can go back for reference. All right, I'll read some questions to you, Nicole, and then you can answer. So how do I highlight?
Oh, sorry. I think Alyssa asked a question about LinkedIn. I think, here, I'll read. Let me put it back in here.
Not sure why I'm not seeing it. It should be in the chat. Oh, Alyssa, you're not seeing the LinkedIn?
Do you see that one now, Alyssa? Fabulous. Yes, I'll look forward to seeing you on there.
And then we have a question from Katie. How do I highlight that I've had concurrent roles in more than one department?
Yeah, so what you can do, Katie, is what you'll start is you'll have the position of the company listed and your total years at that particular company. And then underneath of that, you'll have both of your roles listed and then the what you've achieved in both of those roles, and just have them separated by the dates that you've had them. Because maybe, I don't know if you've worked on both projects concurrently the entire time, but this is way you can add and show that you've added more responsibility to this job. So this way you can give credit to both of them. And yes, resumes are my favorite and my specialty. So if anyone likes resumes, just kidding. If anyone is really looking to really build a really awesome resume, I have a formula that I use and that we can really showcase your skills.
Is someone coming off of mute? Does anybody have any other questions? Oh, we got one more. How do you balance the number of roles versus the key job experience if you've been in the job field for a while, 33 years at the same company?
Are you looking to stay at the same company, or are you looking to transition to something else?
Transition to something else.
So yeah, you would do what I kind of call a combination resume. And what a combination resume is like an average resume, you will have your position and your title and your years. But underneath of it, we would separate your experience into skill sets. So for example, if you did operations and you wanted to do product management and you had done pieces within operations with the product team, we would have a section called product management skills. And then we'd have one with operation skills, and we'd rank them by what you're most interested in. And so we'd want to showcase what you've done that's related. But we also want to give credit for what what your job title has also given you through over the years. But this way, when a recruiter looks at your resume, they can see very specifically like, oh, this is what they're highlighting to me within this role that they've spent their time in there.
Perfect. That answered that question. Perfect. Do we have any other questions?
Yeah, anyone about transitions and things like that? I've helped a lot of people transition from different roles. I worked at General Assembly where I helped students and graduates land gigs after they went from sous chef to software engineer. So I have all sorts of experience helping people reimagine themselves. I've helped parolees move all the way into managers of restaurants, you know what I mean? So all about having those conversations. But yeah, if you're thinking about reinventing yourself or exploring new opportunities, I'm happy to chat and put a spin on it. Master resumes are my specialty. So if you're looking to transition and want a great resume, that's what I can help you best with.
Jackie says, does anyone share training / interest during pandemic? Many broadened learning. Is there value in sharing that or no? What do you mean, Jackie? Is that a question directly for Nicole or just for the group? Nicole.
Okay, I don't think I understand your question, Jackie. So does anyone share training interests during pandemic? Many broadened learnings. Is there value in sharing that or no? As in like you got more professional development, like you pursued more trainings to like add as credentials? Yes. So yeah, absolutely you want to do that. If you had a job gap, you can use that as a fill-in spot. So you can see in your resume, like, you know, pursued blah, blah, blah certificate. And you can list several of the things that you did in that certificate or program that are relevant to what you're doing professionally. Or if you have like a consistent professional record and you want to leave that alone, you can just pop it under your education section and either start a certificate or some sort of something to that effect and just have that as a little category.
We have time for a couple more if anybody does have them.
Anyone wants to talk resumes, now's your chance, everyone. They've changed. If you're new to the job search after a little while, I do have another client who's in the job hunt after 33 years as well. What position do you play? Well, Alyssa, once upon a time, I wanted to be a jammer, and then I realized I didn't want a death sentence. And so then I decided to be a blocker because I always jokingly say it's fun to be with your friends. Because you're always, if you're doing roller derby right, as you probably saw Alyssa, we're always connected into little pods or little groups to stop people. And so with blockers, you get to have your friends. But I often play the pivot, the stripe one, because I'm pretty strong. And if I have to break out of the pack, I can eventually do so, even if I really don't want to.
All right, we got one more question from Jackie. Are there templates one could use for many non-job hoppers? The thought of updating resume feels very overwhelming.
Yeah, what I could do is when, Justice, you're sending out this recording?
Yes.
I could have Justice send out a couple for folks to be able to pop into, kind of like fill in the blank sort of thing. But yeah, resumes for recruiters don't need to be complicated. If you're in UX design or some sort of graphic design or really artistic field, then I have a different expectation of your resume. But if you're kind of your average worker or average person in a field that isn't specialized to design, I just want something simple. I want to see your skills described. I want to see your achievements, and I want it to be an easy readable format. So what I'll do is I'll send a couple of templates that is what they do.
Perfect. Well, if there's no more other questions, thank you so much for your time today, everyone. And as we mentioned, feel free to reach out if you need anything at all from us, but look out for your email for the recording.
All right, everyone have a great day. Thanks for listening to my humorous approach to dating.
Have a great day, everyone.
Bye.